a regulated militia be necessary to the security of a free state? The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam & Company. My name is Cam Edwards. I am so glad you joined the program today. Coming up in just a matter of moments, we're going to be talking about Joe Biden's proposed order on unfinished firearms, the attempt to redefine what a firearm is under the Gun Control Act of 1968, as well as the attempt to impose new record-keeping requirements on our nation's gun store owners. This order, proposed rule coming down late Friday afternoon. I mean, you talk about the Friday afternoon document dump in Washington, D.C., and this is basically when administrations put out stuff that they really don't want to get a lot of attention. So it is kind of odd that the Biden administration, the first proposed executive action on guns, they released not on a Monday morning, but literally like 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, just kind of burying this release in the news cycle. I don't know if they are hoping that the media won't pay attention to it. If you're a gun control advocate, by the way, you've got to be kind of frustrated by that. I mean, the Biden administration, you've already been, haranguing them to do more, and then they drop this news at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. Of course, the details of this proposed order, exactly what gun control advocates want. So they're not going to be too upset about it. But again, we're going to talk with Matthew Larosiere, who is the director of legal policy at the Firearms Policy Coalition. In just a couple of minutes, Matt has had a chance to look over the dozens of pages of this proposed rule and to get to know the devil in the details. And so we'll be discussing primarily what gun owners can do right now, because we are at the beginning of this 90-day public comment period. So we do have an opportunity to weigh in right now, and I hope that you will take advantage of that opportunity to weigh in and express your opinion about this proposal. But after this window has closed, what happens if the Biden administration moves forward with their plans here? Are any of these things actionable in court? We're going to talk with Matt Larosiere about that coming up in just a minute or two. Also want to congratulate Glenn Youngkin in the Commonwealth of Virginia for winning the Republican nomination for governor. That announced late on Monday night. The convention, drive-through convention, held around the state on Saturday. I will confess to you, I was not a delegate. This time around, it was a very convoluted process. There were, I know, a number of folks who did not end up being delegates who wanted to. So I did not cast a vote for governor, but Glenn Youngkin defeating Pete Snyder, Amanda Chase, Kirk Cox, and several other candidates to get the Republican nomination. We'll know who the Democrat nominee is going to be after the party holds their primaries next month. Frontrunner is former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, who is hoping for a second non-consecutive term. And we'll be talking a lot about the Virginia governor's race in the months ahead, because not only is this sort of a potential preview of the 2022 midterms, but as a resident of Virginia, as somebody who has watched this state trend blue over the last few years, I'm really hoping that this is an opportunity to stem the tide of the anti-gun movement in the state where I live. Speaking of the anti-gun movement, they do believe that this is their best shot, their best window of opportunity to advance new gun control legislation, and they're doing everything they can to take advantage of this moment in time. Meanwhile, the Second Amendment Foundation, they've got a proven track record in court protecting the right to keep and bear arms. We can count on them to protect our Second Amendment against the radical left's overreach, but time is running out, and this is the time to get involved right now. If you want to be a part of the fight to defend your firearms freedoms, you can join the Second Amendment Foundation. All you got to do, actually, is text JOIN SAF to 474747. Again, text JOIN SAF to 474747 to show your support for the Second Amendment Foundation's hard work to defend our right to keep and bear arms. All right, so let's turn our attention again to Joe Biden and the Department of Justice and David Chipman, Biden's ATF's nominee, and this new proposed rule dealing with unfinished firearms, the build-your-own gun kits, and even really the definition of what a firearm is under federal law, because this proposal by the Biden administration would change all of that. And again, here to talk about it, the Firearms Policy Coalition's Director of Legal Policy, Matthew Larosiere. Take a look and listen. Hey, Matt, thanks so much for coming on the show, sir. It's good to talk with you today.
Hey, Cam, good to see you again.
All right, so I don't even want to know how many hours you've spent poring over this proposed rule since it came out late Friday afternoon. It was so nice of the Biden administration to drop that on a Friday afternoon for us. But I'm assuming that you have taken a look at this proposal. Let me ask you just generally, how concerned should gun owners be? And then we'll get into some of the specifics.
This is probably the most extreme departure that we've seen from the ATF in quite some time. I think that this is, in my opinion, it's worse than the bump stock reclassification. So I think we need to be extremely concerned. I think all of us, not just gun owners, need to be concerned about the unaccountability of our administrative state. And this is just one in, unfortunately, far too many examples of this type of behavior.
So you say that you think this is worse than the bump stock ban. Is that just because of the scope of this proposal? I mean, this deals with basically, every firearm in existence when we're talking about redefining what a receiver is.
Right. And don't get me wrong. The bump stock ban was absolutely, unquestionably wrong and extremely bad. But so just for comparison with that, they did limit themselves pretty well to one term, right? Here, they took the term framer receiver, right? And yes, it's in their purview to define that. But how they defined that here was by cross-referencing effectively to three other areas of the law and then injecting additional terms to define, right? Like the law just said framer receiver, right? Mm-hmm. It didn't say anything about partial frames. It didn't say anything about future frames. That's all it said. They insert this word readily and then spend a whole, multiple pages describing what that means. That doesn't sound like a good faith definition of a single word. That sounds like they're trying to make new law.
Absolutely. And that's the problem here, right? Because Congress, even if it abdicates its authority, its rulemaking authority to government agencies, it's still the legislative branch that has to create new law, right? It's the executive branch that may interpret and set regulations based on those laws. But this appears to be overreach to you?
Oh, absolutely, unquestionably, especially when it comes to incomplete frames or receivers. As you guys know, they've really had their sights set on 80% polymer 80s and, AR lowers for a long time. And the way they're choosing to accomplish that here is, in my opinion, by effectively changing the GCA. Like I said, within just the definition or in just the section of law where framer receiver is listed, it just says the framer receiver, right? That part. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say anything about, a partial or anything like that.
Something that could be a receiver at some point if more work is done to it. Right.
Right. Exactly. So this is pretty extreme. And there are other areas of the law that do refer to, future parts or readily or this and that. And they're just choosing to inject that here.
Uh-huh. And it seems to me like if this were an easy thing for the ATF to do, if this were something that, look, we've got the power, we can do this. They probably would have done this a long time ago, right? I mean, the fact is, and even the DOJ, Merrick Garland, kind of acknowledged this is the first time where he said updating definitions is how he described, right? First time in 50 years we're updating definitions. Well, what he's talking about is this is the first time since the Gun Control Act of 1968 was put in place that the agency is now trying to redefine these terms. It's not that they're updating the definition, they're redefining what a framer receiver is.
Right. And, for sure, the definition that we had for, since 1971 was pretty stunted. It basically defined a revolver. It wasn't a great definition. That said, it seems to me like the only reason they're doing this is because they started losing. Right? They were getting away with vaguely interpreting that definition all this time, and then they start actually losing cases in, like just position of an AR-15 lower, cases which I think were actually correctly decided. And now, of course, suddenly with them losing in court, and then on top of that, the inability to get gun control through the legislature and everybody freaking out about ghost guns, right? Homemade firearms that have been a fundamental thread of this country's fabric since before it even came to exist. I think they're kind of viewing it as an opportunity to really test the limits of what they can get away with administratively.
All right, so let's kind of break it down. Let's talk about the unfinished frames of receivers, the quote unquote ghost gun material that the Biden administration talks about. Under this proposal, basically anything that could be quote unquote readily converted into a firearm would have to be sold, serialized, and individuals have to go through a background check to purchase it, right? So even if it's not a firearm, as defined by federal law, the ATF says, well, you could turn it into a gun, and therefore you need to go through a background check before you purchase it.
Right. And it's funny, and when they talk about firearm, one of the predicate terms is a weapon, right? And so if it never got finished, how is it a weapon, right? That's one of many things to wrap your head around. But yeah, they are attacking these. I hate the term ghost gun because there's nothing really particularly untraceable about them. Mm-hmm. They're saying, I think they're intentionally using those terms to confuse people with like these imaginary guns that go through airport security, etc. We've had forever unserialized firearms. In fact, before 1968, you didn't have to serialize any of them. And it's standard practice when you get a firearm into your FFL that doesn't have a serial number. The identifying characteristic is that it doesn't have a serial number. You put NSN in your found book. So what they want to do now, and actually how they've defined it is so ridiculous because again, there's all these cross-reference terms. It's like you need you need one of those conspiracy webs to figure out what they're talking about. It says is an item that is readily identifiable or immediately identifiable as an incomplete firearm part. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and so like when I see a piece of 1.5 muffler tubing, I'm like, oh, Sten, that's a Sten almost, right?
Right.
So that kind of throws me off. And then so they're like, is readily identifiable as an incomplete firearm part that can be readily restored, converted, or blah blah blah. And they used all these different terms: restored, converted, or completed. Like they added all these terms, and so you're thinking, okay, well, again, that muffler pipe, how much work do I really need? So then they link to all of these different court decisions that were interpreting other areas of the law, by the way, not this, that were saying everything between 30 minutes with a Dremel counts to 8 hours in a well-equipped machine shop counts as readily restored. Which, I mean, I don't know about you, but there's a lot I can get done with 8 hours in a machine shop.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. So it's wild, completely wild.
All right. So then we've got and you kind of alluded to this earlier, the fact that many firearms today don't have a single part that meets the ATF definition, the current definition of a receiver. Right. And so the ATF, as you say, they've lost court cases. They've gone into court, pursuing, criminal charges against individuals that they allege are illegally manufacturing guns. And these cases have ultimately, they've pulled back. They've had to, in some cases, they've lost these cases. In some cases, they've dropped prosecution because the judge has pointed out, okay, yeah, but look, your definition doesn't meet the federal statute here.
Right.
Rather than Congress, again, going and, trying to make sure that the statute matches the definition, the ATF is now trying to decide and declare that, well, even though these parts don't meet our definition, we're just going to change the definition of what a receiver is to now include partial receivers, because otherwise it would just be too much work. And the ATF basically says, look, we could lose cases and, it would be a chaos. People could be making guns left and right, and there'd be nothing that we could do about it. What's going on with this issue, Matt? And is this the right way to address any potential problem here?
Well, I mean, looking at the ATF's, perspective here, I mean, just imagine what life would be like if not everything was illegal. I mean, like, can you conceive what that might be like? It's ridiculous. So I understand, with that perspective, it makes sense why they have to come in and administratively ban everything. I just think the whole thing is ridiculous. It's clearly politically motivated. There's so much going on here because they want to have their cake and eat it too, right? They want to say, "Oh, we're not going back and changing our mind on any of the things that we've called receivers before," right? Which is what I was expecting them to do. Mm-hmm. I was originally expecting that they would write a definition that said something like, had the most of these parts or something like that, so that they could save all their previous definitions. But what they did now is said, well, the framer receiver could have one or all or maybe none of these parts and still be a framer receiver. If we've already said it's a framer receiver, it's a framer receiver. And if we haven't seen it yet, then, well, effectively every single major part of the firearm is the framer receiver and must be treated as such until we see one and decide which part it is. And that's, the law pretty clearly refers to one part. I think they have to choose a part. And that's what I think is going to be one of their big challenges here. I think the law very clearly limits it to a part. But yeah, like you were saying, they want to.
And they want to have it both ways. I mean,
everyone thought that they were going to go after uppers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that wasn't going to happen because then they'd have to deal with all these, the pre-classification AR-15s or whatever, right? But now, like you were saying, they get it both ways. If you come out with a brand new rifle tomorrow and ATF hasn't seen it yet, and it takes it's kind of similar to an AR upper and lower type deal. Well, you're imperiled to have no idea which part is the framer receiver until they get their mitts on it, and that's not what the law requires.
Yeah, and that's again, I mean, for something that supposedly is to provide clarity to the firearms industry, it seems like this provides no clarity at all, other than the ATF is the one that makes the determinations, and you'll find out if your gun is good to go after you submit it to the ATF. But there's no way for these manufacturers to actually know, okay, is this going to fit within their guidelines until they submit their product to the agency.
Yeah, and who may respond in, it may be 30 days, it may be 90, it may be 480 days, right? And if you're a machine shop trying to turn out a new product, right, you've just tooled up. I know a company that just went $1.5 million in debt to tool up for a new line of handguns. What do you say to them, right? They got to get those machines running. It's really nightmarish. If we let this go through, it's really problematic, much more than some people might be giving it credit for.
All right, so you talk about letting this go through. So right now, the 90-day public comment period is underway. Folks can submit their comments, and they should submit their comments. We saw this, with the earlier pistol brace guidance. I mean, there were a flood of gun owners who were commenting on this, and we really need that same type of reaction here. But let's say that the 90-day window passes, the Biden administration, let's say when an overwhelming amount of opposition to this proposal comes in and the administration ignores each and every one of us, they say, well, we're going to finalize this rule regardless. Are there legally actionable items in this proposal, you think, Matthew, that the FPC and other organizations could use to try to challenge this proposal in court?
I think that there are a few things that can be hit on, and a lot of it is going to depend on the agency's behavior over the next 90 days. So I do think that there's some recourse here. I do think that what they're doing is beyond what's acceptable. I think that they are trying to take it. I mean, we've known forever, and it's not just the ATF, right? It's every administrative agency that tries to stretch their boundaries. I think that they are trying to take advantage of the fact that courts are hesitant to step in, sometimes hesitant to step in on a gun issue, less likely than on a First Amendment issue. Problem is, this even poses First Amendment concerns, right?
How so?
Well, let's say you're an artist, right? You make, you take incomplete firearm parts, make displays out of them. I'm sure tons of us have seen, the rocking chairs made out of shotguns and there's a lot of anti-gun art that very much benefits from incomplete manufactured firearm parts. If now all of a sudden your sculpture on the problems of gun violence, right, needs to go through an FFL and it's never been a weapon, right, but it's got that, pre-firearm part in it, I think that's a First Amendment concern because it's not a weapon, and this is a prior restraint on your speech. So that I think it's a problem. I think it's hugely problematic.
Yeah, well, and again, there's a reason why the ATF didn't do this before now.
Yes,
and I think they knew that this would open up a can of worms. They didn't want to deal with it. Gun control advocates, on the other hand, they want to see these changes. They know that they're in this window of opportunity where this is their best opportunity in decades to try to advance their anti-gun agenda. So, if it ends up in court, maybe, if you're a gun control advocate, look, maybe we win, maybe we don't, but at least we're moving the ball forward. I understand their perspective. I don't agree with it, obviously, but I understand their perspective. But again, it's so important that gun owners get engaged, get involved right now. Are there any resources there at FPC where folks can learn a little bit more about this proposal if they're looking for, talking points, things that they want to hit on in their public comments? Do you guys have any resources available?
Oh, yeah. And there will be more stuff coming out as this goes on. You can just go to, FPC Action, the main FPC website. There's all kinds of resources that will be available there. And I know we've been sending out emails as the analysis continues. I know we're working very diligently on this, and you can definitely expect to see a lot of work coming from us on this front, and especially paying extremely close attention to how the agency conducts itself over the next 90 days. I think that's, but to echo what you said, the most important part is for all of us to point out how bad this is. And I mean, especially I think if you are somebody who has used incomplete firearm parts or something that could be considered incomplete firearm parts in your art, you definitely need to tell them about that. I mean, I think that's definitely happened, and I think it's definitely a concern. We deserve to know when something isn't a gun, right?
Yeah. So
that we can use it for non-gun things, such as art. And if we just suddenly say, well, everything could possibly a gun, right? That takes that whole piece of expression off the table, and I think that is a huge problem.
Absolutely. All right. Listen, Matthew, we got another order that'll probably be released here, another proposal anyway, in about a month or so dealing with the pistol braces. Would love to have you back on to talk about that. But if there are any developments, I want to welcome you back to Cam & Company anytime. And thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
It's always a pleasure, and I'm sure they'll release it on another Friday because they know I'm not doing anything on the weekend.
Exactly. Matthew Larosiere joins us from the Firearms Policy Coalition, Director of Legal Policy over at FPC. Thank you so much for your time, Matt. Appreciate Matt's time today, and we'll definitely be following up on this in the weeks ahead. All right, let's turn our attention now to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We will start there, actually, with a case out of Iowa. Man sentenced to probation for Valentine's Day shooting that injured somebody. Yeah, we did. Remember, gun control advocates, we need to put people in prison if you sell a gun to your neighbor without putting them through a background check. We need to put you in prison if you're carrying a gun without a license. We need to put you in prison if you've got a 20-round magazine and we say you can only have 10 rounds. We want to. All of these new nonviolent possessory offenses that come with prison time that gun control advocates want to put on the books directed at responsible gun owners like you and me. And what is going on right now in the existing criminal justice system? You can shoot somebody. And walk away with probation. That was what happened to Chavez Econom, who's 18 years of age, charged with shooting a man in the face and the torso on Valentine's Day last year. The 57-year-old male victim was hospitalized, but Econom accepted a plea deal with prosecutors and pleaded guilty in February to willful injury causing serious injury. He was sentenced last week to 5 years probation. 5 years probation. Not a day behind bars for an 18-year-old who shot a man in the face. Yeah. The Des Moines Register doesn't have any quotes from the victim in this case, or any quotes from prosecutors trying to explain or justify their decision. I would really like to know the circumstances that led to this plea bargain. And more importantly, I'd really like to hear from gun control advocates who, again, believe that you or I should spend 10 years in a federal prison if we maintain possession of our AR-15s without registering them with the federal government. I would like to hear these gun control advocates explain why they believe it's more important to put nonviolent, responsible gun owners in prison while we're letting individuals who shot someone in the face get away with a slap on the wrist and a probationary sentence. Kind of makes you wonder what's going to happen with this armed citizen story, too. Hollister, California, where a suspected burglar shot in a home in Hollister. This happened overnight. KSBW reporting out of San Benito County. Hollister woman woke up this morning to find a suspected burglar inside of her walk-in closet. After giving him orders to leave and firing several warning shots, she ended up shooting the man in the leg. Neighbor Richard Postigo says, "I'm dumbfounded over the whole thing." I said this actually occurred this morning. It was actually yesterday morning. It was Monday morning. Shooting happened around 6 o'clock Monday morning in a gated community outside of Hollister, known as the Montebello Estates. The man shot 18-year-old Ocean Berger. Sounds like something you should eat, not somebody breaking into a home, but whatever. Shooter is the homeowner, mother of 2 young children. Her husband says mom went into mama bear mode when she decided to arm herself. Neighbor said that's what her mother and aunt were telling me she was. Just protect my kids first. Investigators say Ocean Berger was in possession of several knives and a machete when the mother confronted him inside of her walk-in closet. They say Berger ignored orders to leave, and when the homeowner fired several warning shots, he allegedly advanced towards her. That's when the mother fired at the accused burglar, hitting him in the leg. KSBW says, quote, "And California law may be on her side." You think? Yeah, even in California, they haven't managed to eradicate the right of self-defense yet. Someone's in your home, they're not supposed to be there, they're armed, and you tell them to leave, and instead they're approaching you while they're armed. You have a right to defend yourself. Ellen Campos, Assistant District Attorney for San Benito County, says there is a presumption that favors the homeowner. You're presumed that the person is in imminent fear of either death or great bodily injury. The neighbor puts it in non-legal terms, but terms I think that we can all understand. Richard Postigo says, quote, "You got somebody nuts in the head inside your house. I don't know if he had a knife. I thought I heard maybe he had a knife. You just can't sit still and do nothing." Well, he did. He had several knives and a machete. Investigators say they will not be recommending any charges filed against the homeowner who defended herself and her kids. That's good. But, look, man, even in gated communities, even in places with very restrictive gun control laws, criminals, they still find a way. I'm glad in this case, the homeowner found a way to protect herself and her family. Finally today, our good guy of the day from Ocala, Florida, where a police officer in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing to save a woman from a house fire that police believe may be arson, actually. This was last Friday, about 3 o'clock in the morning. The woman who lives in the house used her emergency alert necklace to call for help after she heard a loud boom and noticed that her front door was on fire. First officers on the scene grabbed a fire extinguisher. 2 others went to the back of the house. Woman who says that she has lived in the home for more than 30 years says she doesn't know who would have done this, but she was kind of trapped inside the house. She was waiting by the back door, but she was unable to open it because of an issue with the lock. She ended up telling the police that she was having trouble breathing. There was a lot of smoke inside the house. So one of the officers kicked the door in, was able to get the woman out. Again, arson investigators looking into the cause of this fire. I can't help but wonder, because it sounds like this woman, not a criminal mastermind or involved in any illegal activity. You wonder if this was not a targeted attack, but they got the wrong target. You know, the idiots who tried to burn down a home with people inside were aiming for another house, but instead they ended up getting this woman's domicile. I don't know. We'll try to give you any updates as they become available, but in the right place at the right time, we'll enable to do the right thing. Those police officers able to save the woman in Ocala, Florida, from the again what appears to be an arson attack. That is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program as always. Don't forget, you can actually, there are a lot of things you can do when it comes to Bearing Arms. You can subscribe to Town Hall Media on YouTube. That way you'll never miss a program. You can find us on rumble.com. Just look for Bearing Arms Cam & Company. Also, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. You can find us there as well. But you know what else you can do? You can also become a VIP subscriber to Bearing Arms. Yep. All you have to do is go to bearingarms.com/subscribe. And you can get exclusive analysis, commentary, news stories you won't find anywhere else. And if you use the promo code GUNS, G-U-N-S, you get 25% off of your VIP membership. I got to tell you, we really do appreciate your support. The VIP members allow us to do programs like this each and every day, bringing you the latest Second Amendment news and information. And it is it's very important that we be able to continue to do this job. So again, thank you to all of our VIP members. And if you want to go one step beyond, you can even become a VIP Gold member. That way you get exclusive analysis, commentary, and more from all of the Town Hall family of websites. All right, so that is going to do it for today's program. We will be back tomorrow, however, with more of the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.